Council will now come to order for the purpose of the Finance Performance Committee meeting. Ito pa yung tunay at nakwe. Ito sila ay nakwe. Ito na ito sila ay tinundikin ifala naman ay tuwili ay nakwe. Ano ka ito? Kaya kung magpasin ay nakwe. Ikaw pa kaya David ay nakwe. Ito yung lang siya na. Ako yung tefilo ay kiri. Kaya nakwe ito patwa. Ay yung ay kiri. Ano ko ito? Aman yun yung ako na ito kuya. Ito maritin mo po na. Tora. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your attendance. It's great to see you all here today, and perhaps those of you online as well. We'll start with our opening karakia. Whakataka whakataka ki tui, whakataka ki te tonga. Ia mā ki na iuta, ia mā karatara ki pai. E hia luanga te ata kura, e tiro e huka e oi rupu, e tihei rodi ora. Kia ora. Point 3 on the agenda is apologies. I don't believe there is any or any likeness. I'm happy to move those if I have a seconder. Councillor Lau. Sorry, hang on, let me slow down here. Apologies. I just wanted to take on some union I've taken on since the last time I had this week, and it was to slow down my process of moving on to the next agenda. So I thank the member for that meeting, and I'll do that now by asking those in favour. So aye. Those against, being none, the motion is moved. Fully apologies. Sure. Number here, Sophie. Identification of extraordinary business. Anybody got any extraordinary business? There being none. I need to none. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Long again. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Nothing to say? Thank you. The motion is moved. Order. Again for conflicts of interest. Right, so conflict of interest, getting that. Have you moved, got a seconder? Thank you, Sophie. Order. Those in favour say aye. Those against, none. So moved. Public forum. There being none, follow the same process. Kia ora. Confirmation of public minutes, point number 7. I take it committee members, those being true and accurate, there being no commentary on these minutes. I'm happy to move the minutes. If I've got a seconder. Councillor Dean. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, there being none, motion is moved to. I have a chairperson's report, and it's available. First of all, I wanted to thank the chairs of the previous committees for their leadership in this space and the learnings that I take on board. Councillor Reid, exemplary example from the meeting we had before. I was away last week, so I'd like to thank staff and my fellow colleagues for fulfilling my duties in my absence last week, particularly the Southbridge Schools, Sam and Elizabeth. The chairs, the wonderful community event there, and also Councillor Miller attended the e-bike session at Southbridge. To some of those in the room here today, and those that have moved on, I acknowledge and thank them for the foresight and wisdom to allow for professional development of members elected to this council. And the immediate membership as an elected member to the executive directors. I'm truly grateful to have attended last week a professional development course, and I believe the fine-tuning of skills and decision-making and acumen that I come away with being part of it, as we all are, will hold our district in good stead in the future. I learned that in a short space of 3 years on this council, my fellow councillors, what may take many years or decades in other professions to learn. I'm truly thankful to this council and the people of the district of Selwyn for your investment in me and to all of us as a councillor. The planned consultation will be taking place over the next few weeks. It is essential that all of our community engage and participate either online or in person, so that we as governors of the district can make the best decisions based on feedback. We are deliberating on some very important topical issues today, and I ask that we all ask questions. Don't be intimidated or worried about asking silly questions. That's what we're here for, to support each other. So if you don't know something, please feel empowered to ask and never feel that you shouldn't. To be prudent with our balance sheets. We are responsible for each other, to support each other, but not to influence. We are responsible to be prudent with our balance sheets, but also provide rigor. As we're about to enter a very tough financial and economic time, I believe this committee will need to be very rigorous in our approach to provide the best outcomes for our district. Noti tu, noti ora, kia ora. So that's my chair report. I'm happy to move that if I have a seconder. Councillor Lyle. Those in favour? Aye. Kia ora. Thank you. Hand over to you, Kelvin. Managers from court.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take the report's real small on a couple of matters. One being the annual report. I'm waiting to hear back from Audit New Zealand this afternoon on whether at this point tentatively we're looking to have a special Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 18th and a council meeting on the 19th adoption. Assuming Audit New Zealand continue on the progress they're on. Secondly, 3 Waters last week, 2 weeks ago, I met with the National Transition Unit to discuss the process for settlement. And attached to this paper is the points that were very much mechanical. Key thing to note there that the numbers within that report where they were at 30 June. They will change, of course, and there'll be a much larger debt balance by the time we get to a transition on 30 June 2024. Also, there was a bit of discussion around no worse off payments and just how they might work and where the additional costs were coming from, and indicated that we are starting to see some additional costs, and we will see additional costs once this goes place. We have duplication of roles and we may lose people, and therefore there'll be a cost involved. The no worse off payments, there is 100 million contestable for indirect stream costs and a 250 million contestable for adverse financial impacts. So of the 67 councils around New Zealand, if you gave everyone an even share of that, 1.5 in that first section and 7 in the second. So it's not a large pool of money to be distributed for where we could be worse off. We are about to draw down the first deposit in this sort of the get you going deposit on the Better Off funding. 10% of the 5.59 which we've been granted. And just to remind the committee, Lincoln Town Centre 5 million, the cycleways feasibility helps to Te Waihora and around Te Waihora 290,000. Leeson Health feasibility study 100,000, and Ruanganga representation and seed funding and support 200,000. Now, of those, we are working through the feasibility. We've got a third-party firm working on the feasibility around the Lincoln Health piece, and we're starting to make progress on each of the others at varying degrees. At the next committee meeting, there will be progress on those, which will go into the major projects report, and we'll maintain that on a monthly basis. I'll leave it there, Shane, and take questions.
Councillor Dean.
You mentioned the no worse off funding. So I said that's the figures just plucked in your pocket. Where if they were equally spread, has there been any sort of consideration, or what do you think in terms of our legitimate claims, so that no worse off funding, we've got a higher claim over other councils?
I think all councils will have a similar claim, but if you just spread it evenly, it's not going to work. Spread it proportionately based on the size of the council would also not work, because those smaller councils will get next to nothing, whereas the smaller councils are probably more deserving of them than large. And under, we had an early estimate, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was in the range of 1 to 4 annually. And so this won't disappear after 1 year. It'll carry on for a point in time. But a lot of the staff load, and you do have attrition of staff and various things like that, which we'll deal with and allocation to other areas, but it is a long run thing.
I've got a range of questions. I might just work my way through them, perhaps answer them one by one, perhaps that's okay. Just starting on page 12, just talking about used to have internal borrowing, now we've made it external, which is good. But the cash that we've released internally, what is happening with that? Is that ex Sell Investment Holdings cash that we've held is now available for other purposes, or what is that cash doing now?
Well, the cash was always, well, it was where we allocated the cash, so it's notional stuff, whether it's.
I mean, notionally now, is it the investment portfolio back again as still funds?
Well, it still sits within, that was sitting back within tagged to various things, which one of them was across the road here at the Health Hub, which is now being spent, and the rest will sit within that general rate pool. So not to say it's spent, it's just in that balance of that account.
Because I think in David's investment paper, there was still cash holdings from Sell Investment Holdings Limited. I'd clearly like that to be ring fenced or made aware of what that number still is, so that can be used for further investment purposes, so reinvested. Yeah, that's question one. Debt transfer methodology. Just of interest for starting, are we on principal and interest loans, or are they loans with interest capitalised at the end, or how is that working?
Okay, so we take out generally floating rate bonds, which from the DFA, we then go and fix those with swaps. So we're settling those swaps and we're settling those interest payments on a not as we go through the loan. So it'll be quarterly, I think the payments are. So they'll settle up through. And yeah, so it really is. The number there is purely the principal.
Because I suppose what annoys me, I suppose, more than anything else, is that the new water services entity is taking advantage of our credit rating. So they'll be getting debt from us at, let's say, let's use the number 3%, don't know what it is. But if Waitaki hasn't got a credit rating, or another council has got no rating, they're probably borrowing at 5%. So there should be a margin to us for using our credit rating, in my view, because the cost of funds are different because of our rating. I mean, I think I brought that up. I don't know whether there's a chance for us to charge a margin, but it doesn't seem fair that they are going to take up to 5 years to pay this money back to us and use our credit rating along the way.
Yeah, it's not just credit rating, it's the timing of when the debt's taken.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of, we're well hedged, very low effective interest rate. As new debt does come on at a much higher price, it'll be closer to that 5% mark. There is not a great deal of difference in the basis points with the credit rating. There's a bit, but not hugely material. But I've highlighted the point that our new debt coming on will be coming on at a much higher rate. And I'd prefer to see, rather than an average cost of debt, it's the actual cost we're seeing and making sure that we're fully recovering that.
It's strange that you make that point, because it was certainly sold by the rate of borrowing through our borrowing program. So it hasn't been material in your view.
Oh, it's not a lot of basis points that you get, but it is, and we don't have a lot of debt, and we have come from a very low interest environment where the differential is pretty small.
The next question raises on top of page 14 about DIA, noted that legislation provides for the water services energy bulk charge to the council for stormwater services. Stormwater, I think, if they're going to pay the service, they should be billing direct rather than us using us, because it'll be seen as a council bill and it will inevitably. Is it only restricted to stormwater? That can confirm that.
In terms of that line of it, yes, the rest of it will be billed ultimately through the new entities, But stormwater is one which is a bit more. The other thing to note is that with billing metered, which is just further down the piece there, meter water charges, likely that we'd hand over that billing to the entity on day one. If we weren't billing in that way, we would be more than likely dealing with it as similar to ECAN charge.
The last question, you raised it earlier, but have you any indication when you for sure know what services we're left to fund and staff, so you can plan your resourcing and don't stop losing staff? Is there any indication when that might be?
And we really well, DIA through the National Transition Unit are moving at a pace and focusing primarily on those that are 30% engaged in water activities, although they are looking for information at a lower level, which we're a wee bit nervous around. That the minister does need to come back from his review and signal where this is heading. Who knows what pace it's at? It may all slow down, it may not. But at the moment, it's every day we've got various meetings with various parts of the transition.
Going to Councillor Dean's point, it's anecdotal that there may be inducements for staff to leave to join either the water services entity or other organisations, basically a sign-on fee. Is it appropriate that we approach the No Better Off Fund for retention payments for our existing staff to keep them within the organisation?
Essential with that, retention payments are tricky, and we can work out which staff you're actually paying retention payment to. Where yes, we do want, if water service paying retention for someone who's borderline, it's a tough call to make. So we have to work through that very, very carefully. There's a bit of there's a bit of danger in that stuff.
It's dangerous. But I'm saying, is there a mindset that we would apply for it at least, because surely we're going to come under stress.
We can put it to them.
Councillors, are there any more questions? Observations or? Thank you, Grant, and thank you very much, Kevin, for your report. I had a couple of questions. What's FIS? Agreed principle of reserves. Yes, thank you. And just secondly, page 13, under the council's DC policy, developers can request a reassessment of their DC if there's material change to their development, I assume, or can withdraw and reapply for consent. How does that affect a council's financial position? Is there a negative impact to that? Should there be a fundamental reassessment which then causes that action to be taken?
Well, it's going to depend on what the DCs are set at the time, but the theory of the DCs is recovering the cost of the development, so therefore it should have no impact.
Thank you. Councillor Mutt.
Hi, just making reference to the No Worse Off, the comment the DIA will work through the principles and methodology for allocating No Worse Off funding over the next quarter for discussion with the sector. It just seems a little bit unusual to me that those principles and methodology haven't been considered, quite some time ago. What's your thoughts on that, Calvin?
I describe this process as if you're trying to build a plane while it's flying. It is a lot of it is being developed as they go. They're working to an agenda of a minister, and that isn't considered the length of time you'd reasonably need to do this well.
Thank you very much, Calvin, and great question, Councillor Mutt. Councillors, we have the manager's report in front of us.
So can I just ask one supplementary question around the DCs? Are you aware, under the new water services entity, will the DCs continue to be charged on a territorial authority geographical basis, or will it be over the whole water services entity, using as the example the ESSS connect on fee of about $4,250 versus if we had a whole of South Island effect, it could be 16,000, 18,000 a connection. Do we know the answer to that one yet?
We don't know the actual methodology, but my gut feel on this would be the latter. That will be spread across the district, because that's the intent of the reforms, is to create a more uniform approach to water billing and share that cost across a wider district.
Because under the current DC policies, you've got to be able to reflect the actual costs that are incurred in providing that service. So that wouldn't apply. They'd have to repeal that bit of legislation. How would they do that? Just make a new bit of legislation up?
Well, DCs won't apply. So there'll be, I think they're calling them infrastructure charges. And for a large, I'm imagining they'll be negotiated on a large development by development, and they will simplify the single household type development charge to a uniform connection charge, which will be follow the same principles as the cost of connections across the wider area.
That's on it.
Are we at risk then of the rural people who pay for their own septics, their own wells, to then be subsidising the urban lifestyle where the councils are?
So if you're not receiving water from the entity, then you won't be paying for it.
Yeah.
You're only paying for the provision of the service.
This is going to move for the manager's report. I stand and seconded by Councillor Dean. Motion to move that report. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, there being none. Kia ora. Second on the agenda, the number 10, finance and performance report.
Okay, so this is the finance performance report for the period ended 28th of February. The numbers are very similar to where we were last month, not too much movement. Just in summary, net surplus before we allocate things across to expenditure, progressing as it has historically below the plan, but at an improved rate from prior years. We're seeing, as discussed earlier this morning, a more positive trend in building consents being issued, while still not at the levels we need it to be. It has been a positive move forward, being across into the facility spaces. Revenues are positive, and you can see by the graphs there that the customer numbers are doing well. Moving through to page 19 of the agenda, the revenue is up 10.52 million above the budget. A couple of significant drivers here being one being development contributions, and just a reminder that these are contributions to capital payments. It seems a little bit odd that they would sit in your income statement or straight to your balance sheet, but that's the way it works. So that's quite often why we see a surplus at the end of the day. And we've got a negative variance in the targeted rates space, which doesn't run quite in the same manner as the general rates, which is population driven. This is the time of water billing and the timing of how the new rate is applied through. The expenses are still on that page, the numbers, but commentary on the following page. And continuing to track above budget in the transport space. We've traversed that a bit at this various meetings, and that's permanently locked in that variance. Consulting and professional fees, we've got an increase there above budget that is partially being offset by additional fee revenue in the regulatory space. Financing and insurance is mainly insurance, driving that from last year's insurance renewal. And just on insurance, we'll have at the next Audit and Risk Committee a paper on insurance cover. Moving on to the capital expenditure page, which is page number 23. As I said, we've spent 49%, so we'll have a negative variance of 17 million, so below plan. The major projects paper, which is coming up next, which will cover off the large pieces, but I just want to point something out around the balances. The major projects doesn't look at renewals, so that's why you'll see a difference in the balance. But I'm looking to update that in future months so we have a complete capital works view of the world. Moving over to the balance sheet, key point to note here is that our net debt has moved down slightly on last period, and you'll see that term deposits there sitting at nil, but it's just a transition between term deposits rolling off and us putting them back on term deposit, which straddled the month. Investments on the next page, not much movement there, but just want to note that in the work program coming forward into the next or the following meeting after that, there will be a report on effectiveness of this portfolio and what the returns are, and so we'll take a deep dive into that portfolio. The next page is on performance metrics. There's no real change to what we've had. Small ones there dragging the overall view down, but if you looked at the overall percentage against operating costs, we're doing okay on that, so there's no issues. It's just how that measure looks at each individual community centre. And we've discussed earlier today around building and resource consents. So I'll leave it there for questions.
Councillors, over to you. That's good.
Bill,
Sorry about that. That's it. It was Councillor Dean.
Thank you. So you mentioned on page 25 that there's going to be a deep dive. You can probably know I'm going with this. Is that deep dive going to be a fuller list of investment properties?
Yeah, it'll be as fully we can get at the point in time as we do our property review. But really, the focus here is on invested return on investment, where we're seeing with it, and in future meetings after that or workshops, I'll be looking to run where we are from a risk point of view and what sort of risk we want to take on in the future to actually move this forward a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Right.
just page 20, looking at the insurance going up by 1.2 million, is it because we're insuring more assets, or is it inflation, or the risk analysed is higher, or a combination of all three things? And I don't recall that increase being approved at council, or was it through audit and risk? I'm just not sure where that went to.
Went through audit and risk, and you're spot on. There's a combination of, well, actually a combination of two things driving that particular one. Was the value of our assets lifting. So every year we lift our value of assets, one through the revaluation process, but two, we're adding assets. And the third was the market has been moving for the last few years. Look, anecdotally, we're probably looking at a 10 to 20% lift, which is included within the annual plan, which is out for engagement currently. So what will come back to this Audit and Risk Committee early May will be our entire insurance program. What is the coverage of it, and what are the deductibles within it? We won't have a firm price at that point in time because they're still working on it, but we'll at least know the program. We can judge whether we're over insuring or what we're going to change in the portfolio.
So the discussion of alternate solutions, where will that be held at? Audit and Risk, or at one of these committees?
It'll be Audit and Risk.
What happens if you're not on the Audit and Risk Committee? How do you get into that?
I think the best solution for that would be to raise those concerns with the chair or one of the other councillors, and we could then address that at the meeting.
You've got nearly 25 million of cash floating around. How active is our treasury management and ensuring we're actually getting the best return on that 25 million? I see you're using term deposits, but even at 5%, there's another $1.5 million nearly of interest a year. Are we getting that return on? Was when it was low interest rates, it wasn't so vital, but now an increasing trend. Is it active treasury?
Yeah, it is. Yes, so we take reasonably short-term positions on it because the cash does fluctuate reasonably significantly. We're building up a sort of floating fund of floating funds. You can just distribute that. So we look to hold a certain amount on term deposits. We can turn it reasonably quickly. But I have, during this period, taken that term deposit number down significantly from where it was because we were borrowing when we had money in hand and just wasn't prudent.
On the reverse side, are we optimising our expenditure as well by adding on January or deferring absolutely?
So we pay, I guess, 3 times a month, and it will be 20th of the month. There'll be a catch up at the end of the month, and then there's normally a few which are where we've got contractual commitments, but we're not paying early on anything, but we're not paying late either.
Thank you, Councillor. Sam.
Yeah, on page 25, total value of investments, including property, financial assets and CCOs is nearly 20 million, 190. The number on page 22 around our council funding impact statement, interest and dividends and other investments comes on at 4.7 million return. Is that a return on all those investments listed on that page, or how does that break you down?
No, it's not all of them. There needs to be a lot of tidy up on that, and that report will come back in due course. Will show where all the revenue is sitting. Just historic reasons it's sitting in different spots. Yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? There being no, councillor.
Just an observation, Gavin. The colour chart on the
Councillor Dean. Unfortunately, it doesn't help me. I'm colourblind, but I can pick up on the I think very good cordial and great question from you, Sam. Here's the question for me, and I've got a lot of notes here, deep diving and picking your eyes out of everything. But more importantly, I just wanted to know from a professional opinion, Calvin, that and you've already mentioned that there needs to be a lot of tidy up. There's to be a lot of tidy up and more rigor built into our balance sheets. In your opinion, professional and investments, for instance, the balance sheets, is there enough rigor? Is there enough prudence? And as you've mentioned, the DC's extrapolating that out of it. We're running pretty close to the line, in my opinion. What would be your comment around our financial position, our financial outlook, and whether we're maximising on our investment strategy moving forward?
It's a fairly big question. It covers a lot. From a prudence point of view, yes, we are, as a council, prudent in our approach to expenditure. As I've said previously, look, there's challenges around expenditure from time to time where we could probably do a little bit better, and all organisations do that. And that's the key focus for me, is ensuring that the spend is appropriate and effective. And that means sometimes turning some things off and making those hard decisions, which will come back to you, of course, to make. In terms of the investment portfolio, we'll probably discuss this a little bit later on when we start to look at some SOIs and publicly excluded. But with the portfolio we've got, it's returning some good income. We're getting dividends, which is supporting the general rate and keeping it a lot lower than it would be if we didn't have those. So look, the reason for that, the deeper dive into this in the next few months, is to really make sure that we do have the rig on this and the performance. I've now got a team in place with a lot more capability to get in there and deal with it.
Good on Calvin. Yes, thanks very much. I think as I alluded to at the start, we're into some pretty financially tough times, and with transitions and all this going, there'll be some prudence going forward. What I'd like to recommend is that we pick up the last paper, the investment strategy that was put forward by the CEO, and that we work towards a workshop on that particular paper so that councillors are fully aware of expectations, opportunities, and potential for rigor in our investments and balance sheets moving forward.
That will be part of that paper, which I just referred to, and then the next stages of that is to do exactly that, to review and reconsider elements of our strategy moving forward.
Thank you, Calvin. Councillors, that's the report. Councillor Glynn and seconded Councillor, sorry if I've skipped a few hands, it was just what was still up there when I saw it. Happy to move the report. It's been moved. All those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, report moved. See, point 11, major projects report.
Just to introduce this, councillors, so Jenny Nicholson's going to come up and present this. Just want to highlight in here that this is taken a newer format. We've taken feedback on board from various councillors and the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee who was previously looking after this. Just wanted to talk to that. This report will evolve over time as we get a broader view into our portfolios and understanding where the expenditure is. But Jen's just going to run through a short set of highlights and then take questions.
Sure, Jen.
Thank you, Rocky Era. Okay, good afternoon. Firstly, with the capital major projects summary report, I think the key thing for this month is that we don't really have many material changes from the report that we presented last month. Look, from a program perspective, a program lens, that's probably not unusual for the scale and the size of the projects within this portfolio, though I would expect to see some movement in the upcoming months. So hopefully we'll see that reported. We've added some additional information in for this report to give visibility in terms of our capital program summary. I think what was quite heartening when we put these numbers together is to see 75% actual towards plan. I think that's quite different from previous years where we've traditionally been predicting a little bit lower. Probably a number of reasons for that in terms of phasing, size, resourcing of our projects. That's been good to see. And yeah, so I think more the focus for us this month has been around how we present information. It's around creating the transparency and creating the conversations that we need to be having at a program level. I think traditionally one of the changes that we have made is to present information at a program level as well as a project level. I think in the past, some of the feedback that we've received in post-implementation reviews is that you may see projects at an individual level, but maybe not see the collectives that producing an outcome. So, which is why we've tried to reposition some of that information in this report. I don't think I have anything further to add, so open to any questions.
Councillors? Any councillors? Councillor
Phil, go first.
Oh, sorry, Phil. Popped up there, Phil.
We'll do that against the next one.
I thought no one was going to say. That's good.
I have on page 30, you're talking about a full year forecast. The actual is 68 million, but the plan was 91 million. Obviously, there's a significant difference between those two numbers. Can you explain how that came about, or what those two numbers mean?
Yeah, so that will be to the end of the financial year. That's our budget to of 91 million. So this report was produced, which I didn't proceed to say in February. So we would still expect to see some movement in that actual number.
So that full year forecast of 68 million is not actually. We're not forecasting that we're going to be having a $23 million surplus.
That is the project manager's estimate at this point in time. There is another space of evolution and development for our project managers is on accuracy of forecasting. the number will move the ball around, and quite often projects won't commence or they'll be delayed for various reasons from when we planned, and we'll carry those projects forward into the next year.
Okay, that makes sense. I was going to say that's a big difference to, which actually leads on to the following question. It's around Rolleston Town Centre development. The budgeted spend is 22 and the actual is 14. Are those numbers realistic in terms of as we go forward, bearing in mind all the stoppages and everything? I guess what I'm asking is that do we perceive there's going to be a blowout in that 22.22 million as we go forward?
The town centre budget, if you refer to page 36, you'll see there that the current estimate for the last phase of it being the town square is looking higher than what the budget is. Now, the reason we've effectively put this not fully on hold, but we're looking at plans around what we can afford, where we want to head on this, and that will come back to this committee to discuss. And this is largely due to the fact that when we designed this element, it was some time ago, it was multiple years ago, may have even preceded me, where we had an arbor structure which was to fit in with the Cooper's investment. That has since changed a lot, pricing's changed a lot, and we suspect they'll be a lot more expensive, but we need to think about how we use that space in the best way. So the team are working on what that needs to look like, and we'll come back then with potential costs.
Actually, which actually brings me to the next thing I was going to say, which was around the colour coding that you're using on the report here again. No good for our chairman, but again, really not indeed a really clear colour coding. Thank you.
Councillor Dean, Councillor Miller.
Starting on page 28, and you've mentioned already, I would regard 50% delivery of CapEx as terrible and 75% barely acceptable. I suppose while we're doing it as an improvement, which it is, it's still a poor reflection on us as a council. And do we go through our CapEx project list and actually have a go at seeing what we can outsource to try and bring that number up?
Just your microphone, please, Jim.
Those are options that we do definitely need to look at, is what we're doing with those particular projects, and can we send it out? Some of it will be budget related on whether we do have enough to do that, and also capacity of the market.
Yeah, the other point on this is our planning cycle and how it works. And so there's this way we approach this. We seem to want to do everything and fire it in there. I know you all ask the same question every time, and it's the right question to ask because it can be done. Budgets tend to be put in their entirety as opposed to spread across the likely outcome of them, and that causes issues. So it's an oddity around public sector where you have this thing called carry forwards. In a corporate sense, that doesn't exist, and you'll reset your budget and you'll start again. And there's much more discipline around making sure that you're spending that budget. So that comes around back to daily project planning cycles of discipline around that.
You've already raised it, but I want to talk about it again about the forecasting. We're seeing continual budget overruns and forecastings, not just being marginally out, but substantially out. That's a significant concern because it either raises real concerns for us as governors around our budgeting processes, that we're sending out a 5.9% rates increase based on the forecastings that we're doing here. History is telling us that our forecasting is not good. And you've only got to look at the grinding example, and it's in this paper here. I think I can find the page. Page 33. The Darfield trunk sewer, absolutely disaster around forecasting. We started off thinking 8 or 11 million or something, and where it's ended up. And the thing that concerns me is the variations were off 3.25 million were approved by the engineer to contract. Was that within the contingency? There was no contingency because it hadn't been included. It wasn't included in the original budget in the commentary. So It's a damning indictment on our business practices here. I don't know of any other business that would get away with that level of capital project management. And I'm full reflection on you're taking it over, but you know, this is a disaster. You can't dress up any other way.
They're really good points, Grant, and it's where my focus has to be on this. The Trunksville one is an interesting case because it is one that came somewhat from left field given the money that we got and was rushed through, and the appropriate due diligence probably hadn't occurred around the costings of it, but there's still no excuse around how that came forward. I would like to discuss this with the committee within a workshop environment, just to work through the process of where we're heading on it, which is a lot more detail around specifics, tools, and what we need as an organisation to do this better.
In the same context, you're on page 34, the Kakaha Park, budget overrun of 420,000 for roading adjustments were not foreseen. We employ professional roading engineers and design agents to get these right. And so you sort of, again, you're going, well, where is the tension within the system, which is going back to these people and saying, well, actually, where did you get this wrong?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I'll turn off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant. Councillor Reid.
Grant said some of what I was going to say there. It concerns me, these changes. So he's talked about page 34 of the Kakaha Park, but you go over to 35 and that's not big money, but it says there's 21 different variations to a project. I can't even fathom how that works, when you scope something out that's but also, so Phil's brought up about the Rolleston Town Square, and I've got a concern as the budget on that with us having to wait until what the developers are doing. I mean, the costs go up as time goes on, and so where we end up with that. The Recovery Park Stage 2, so that has, my understanding, that's been approved, but there's no time frame on when that's going to be going ahead and where that sits. Pines wastewater treatment plant expansion. So we've got real long lead times on getting that work done. And will that actually potentially overlap with the entity changing as well? I mean, I don't know.
Answering the last question first, yes, it will overlap, and what will occur here is we will have spent money on it, which goes to debt. We'll get paid the debt over that period of time, and they will pick up the assets. So we're cash neutral in effect on that.
But we don't. I mean, the interesting thing will be how it does the changeover between us and them for actually making sure the project's finished. I would think. Well, I don't know how it's going to work, but yeah, that's a concern. I would have thought.
The commitment of the National Transition Unit and the entities is that they are picking up our plans in the first few years. That's well and truly in there. I'd be very surprised if they abandoned something so significant that would put the community's waste at risk. Addressing some of the other concerns around variations, 21 variations that we've just been open and as transparent as possible around this reporting. 21 variances in a project is not a lot. Go and build a house and you'll find out how many variations you end up with. In terms of the town centre, we are in a difficult position because the the Arva or the square structure sits right in the middle of that development. So the ability to build that ahead of time will be challenging, but we are looking at those options to see what we can do.
Councillor Lightfoot?
Yeah, just a query on variations. Are they all costed before they're accepted by council so there are no surprises?
Yes, they are. There'll be odd one that may creep through, but on the most part, yes, they are.
Thank you, Bob. Who's next? Councillor Gooden? Yes.
Thank you. I think I just have a couple of concerns around consultancy fees and professional services, because that seems to be sort of mentioned in every one of these projects. And I wonder whether council is getting value for money with these people, or are they seeing council as a cash cow as such?
So not on that, but consultancy fees, and I'm having a bit of a crackdown in terms of our reporting on this because it is a bucket which just gets called that. So in a large scale project, you'll have engineers doing designs. There'll be you'll have potentially quantity surveyors, project managers, and then the actual construction. So I want to get a lot more granular on what these are being put to, as opposed to just throwing in this bucket called fees, so we can really see what we're doing, and we can then put the blowtorch on to make sure we are receiving value for money.
Yeah.
I don't think, look, my personal opinion on this, we have a rigorous tendering process and procurement approach, and we're normally getting more than one tenderer, so therefore we are getting competitive pricing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Your wish. Yeah.
Yeah, just again, having this report for the whole group to see proves the value of these committees. And again, the chance to be able to see things for everyone to have that discussion is really good. I think we've got to remind ourselves that just because we see something every 6 weeks, we don't have to comment the same thing we did 6 weeks ago. And this is always a retrospective looking report, and some of these matters have been going on for a couple of years now. And so thinking about how this fits in with what we're hoping for the future and the things that have been raised today are legitimate. And so thinking about how practice changes over time to make sure that we continue to improve. But some of the reflection needs to be on ourselves as governors too, not just questions for the staff, because the decision around the Darfield sewage line was a decision we made as councillors against staff recommendations. Because of a philosophical position that we took, that we wanted a better outcome for our community, and we've got a better outcome. It's great that this project has happened, and I don't think then we can go back and just think that it's staff's problem with who we've got. Some of that sits with us in our decision making, our time frames, and what we expect. So let's look at our game, and I agree with
that statement you just made, Sam. There's a difference between making a decision and the enacting of that decision. The enacting of that decision was done poorly, because the result is there for us to see, because the consultants and the value and the estimates and forecasting that were put in forward. The decision we made is not connected to the delivery of the project. I'll challenge that statement.
You can challenge it, but of course the decision that we make is connected to the delivery of it, because the time frame that we give our staff to spend money that's within a budget is one and the same. So they go together. And we need to think about our own reflection for ourselves about how we do these things. So hopefully through these committees and the ability for them to be considered ahead of our long-term plan, rather than one-off decisions of us to start to plan out what the delivery program is going to look like, and our ability to get the right expert consultants in to support the expert staff that we currently have. Thanks.
Kia ora. Councillor Munch.
I just wanted to finish on a positive note and say well done on some of those projects that came in well under budget.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Jen, for your report. Just to summarise, IG, noting the effort and the work that's gone into the report and the reporting of. It's clear to see that as governors, obviously the intent and the benefit of these committees, it's good to see that we're settling into the rhythm of it, and we don't, we're open to challenge. Moving forward, I think at a governance level, we really need to set the tone or the expectation moving forward. And that's what I'm really pulling out of this. So I think a workshop sooner, it will be a good opportunity to flesh all of that out, and that would be the appropriate time to get some rigor around the major projects moving forward. Thank you. Sorry. And we move on to second for the reports. Sam and Councillor Ryan. And all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, there being none, move that report. Major projects. I'll move on to the draft annual update report. Again, Jen.
Just to introduce this one again, it really is for information. We are sitting at around about 20 submissions through the engagement process. So that is pleasing to see we are in the level of engagement we are, and you will have all received a copy of the document. It's not does not include the full financials, they are online. So please enjoy it and read it at your pleasure. I think we can just take questions on that one if there's anything that comes up.
Councillors. There being no questions, no, there being no questions. I'm happy to move that report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mumford. Those in favour, say aye. Aye. Those against, there being none, move that report. Next on the agenda, long-term plan update.
Again, this is just an update for information. Gina provided a bit more detail on it, but we have commenced the process, which is a long run thing for a long-term plan. So into you, Jen. Microphone, Jen.
Excuse me. Where we're at the moment is really around developing all the key inputs that we need to go into the planning processes. So there are a multitude of those that staff need to prepare so that we can bring into this forum to help with the decision-making process. So part of that is having a look at the workshops that we need to schedule and get those scheduled in for council. So I'm just working through that at the moment. We should be able to provide you an update or a proposed schedule and content of what those workshops should look like at the next report. Apart from that, it's just really pulling together all those planning inputs that staff are really focused on working on at the moment. I don't really have much more like that unless there are any questions on that.
Yeah, great. Good to see the planning that's underway, the time frame that's there. Thinking back to the last time we did this, we sort of used a community panel type of approach, and wondering how that fits in with what you're scheduling here, and ensuring that there's wider input at the early stages of forming up that long-term plan.
Yes, absolutely. I'm on. Okay, yes, we have we're in the process of actually got a bit of a workshop tomorrow to look at that in early engagement and what we may do around that and the options around that. I think the feedback from the last LTP was that process worked really well. So it's building on that and taking that into this next forum and looking if there's any other opportunities for us to do things a little bit better in that space.
What I do want to do is broaden that community engagement. Follow the same sort of process where we'll use a third party to work through it, but look to broaden. So it's a little bit of I think we ended up with 30 people last time. I'd like to have that maybe 3 sessions like that, so we get a much broader view of the community's opinions. Bring that before we start having those discussions with yourselves. Bring that feedback into that discussion, and then have it, rather than us potentially going down paths which are not necessarily aligned.
Councillor Munt.
In terms of the community engagement, did you host them in just the central areas, or did you go out into some of the rural communities?
The engagement happens at multiple layers. And this one we're referring to was where we went out and sought people from across the district, different demographics, backgrounds, etc., to get a group that were representative of the community.
Councillors, do we have more questions? Just personally, I think it's really important that we get engagement right. We had some really good examples if we're talking about internal capacity with the library team. They had amazing engagement, well, considering the population around the current consultation they had. They did a fantastic job. The community were really involved, schools were involved. So I think it's important that we follow that lead, look internally what works before we look externally, as we've already discussed today. So Looking for a mover and a seconder for that report if there are no more questions. Kumamoto Sen and Councillor McGuinness. Those in favour say aye. Those against, there being none, report moved. Thank you very much, Judy. And we now move to the resolution to exclude the public, and thank you all, if you're online there, for your attendance. Much appreciated. I can have a move in the second for that. Councillor Miller and Councillor Hassan. So moved. Sorry.